So I guess we can start slowly. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today to listen to Phil, who is going to present to us his new book. When he actually asked me to be a facilitator for this short session, I said yes immediately because the topic that is reuniting us this afternoon is actually very dear to me. As a professor of strategy at HEC, presentations are not, my key topic of I would say, of teaching, but I always try to make it a point that, everybody that presents to me actually makes things much clearer. I think that the revolution that we're going to talk about this afternoon is really needed. And I think that we can always improve, even if we have reached to a certain stage, always improve. So I've known Phil actually as a student. That's almost more than a decade ago, actually, in 2009. And then he started very soon after his EMBA to teach, actually, presentation skills. And over the years, this experience with executives has actually, translated into what I would call a really robust methodology. And now this methodology that Phil and his team have been able to test, with many different companies, many different executives, has come into a book. And this is the book that we're going to talk about this afternoon. And so, Phil, I guess this being said, we're all ears to understand more about, what is this revolution, or what are these revolutions, as I understand it. So we'll listen to Phil, and after a while, after he's finished with his presentation, we'll have a fair amount of time for questions. And so if you have any questions, you can use the chat. I'm not going to interrupt Phil while he speaks, but we will take the questions once he's done. So Phil, the stage is yours.
Hélène, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today, and it's a great honor for you, Hélène, to be here hosting this as well. So all those years ago, when I was still a member of the Executive MBA community at HEC and following the Executive MBA, I remember, Hélène, you were about the only professor who gave us useful advice on slide design. So you have been a business presentation revolutionary long before this book ever came out. And it's an honor for me to have you here today to host this and ask me all of everyone's difficult questions later on. So what is business presentation revolution? Why are we talking about a revolution? Why are we even talking about presentations? PowerPoint has been around for so long. People have been presenting for so long, and yet most presentations still are not very good presentations. In fact, the word I'd like to start with is not the word presentation. The word I'd like to start with is actually leadership, because for me, leadership really is something very important. If we are selling a product, a service, our company, ourselves, our ideas, we absolutely need to make people want to follow us. And for me, that is actually the definition of leadership. It is the art of being followed. And the thing is, we don't follow anybody who doesn't really look at the audience, doesn't really look them in the eyes, speaks with a boring voice, or who puts a wall of words up on the screen, which people simply cannot read while they are also listening. This does not work well at all. So it's really important that we present like leaders. And so this book is for leaders. It's for anybody who needs to lead through ideas and by changing what audiences do. Now, of course, most presentations don't do that. Most presentations, for me as a presentation specialist, are more like crime scenes. This is really not what we want to be doing. All of these poor people that you see here behind me, these people are not going to be doing what you want them to do. They are not going to be wanting to follow you. So we don't just need to change a few things. We absolutely do need a revolution. We need to change at least 5 things, and this is where I've identified in the book 5 key points which we absolutely need to change totally compared to what we've been doing for the last 20 years or so. Before I get into those, I think it's really important that we look at what a successful presentation should look like. And a successful presentation should cover 5 key success factors. And these key success factors, you can summarize them with the word SCORE. The first is that things should be simple. So here we have a simple clock. It is just telling the time. It is just giving us the hours and minutes. It is not telling us the seconds. It's not telling us the days of the week or the month or the phases of the moon. It's just telling us the time. Well, we need to do that in presentations too. We need simply to be telling people, okay, this is what I'm here to say. This is why it's important to you. This is what I want you to do with it. And really keep it simple. We don't remember complex stuff in an oral presentation. So that's the first thing, keep it simple. Same with your slides, keep them simple too. If people are reading stuff, well, they're not going to be listening to you because humans can't do them both at the same time. So there we are, simple is good. It was Da Vinci who said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. The second key success factor is clear. And these key success factors, we're going to see these throughout the book. So here we have some simple clocks. However, they need to be visible from a long way away. The bell, Big Ben, behind these clocks needs to be heard from a long way away, just like your voice needs to be heard at the back of the room. And also, your slides need to be visible for the people who are at the back of the room or who are watching on a smartphone. Because let's be honest, we don't like it when the speaker says, oh, I'm sorry, you won't be able to read this, but don't worry, I'll go through it quickly. That is not visual design. It is not leadership. So we can't be doing that. Also, you'll see that this tower has a very nice neo-Gothic structure. Your presentation needs structure as well. Doesn't need to look like it's been stitched together from 4 or 5 different presentations with no kind of logical flow. Flow is important. Structure is important. Story is important. It needs to be original. Like this clock here, we don't pay attention to things we've seen before. Here, this is a completely different clock with carrots, with vegetables and fruits, etc. Well, you know what? You'll remember something like that. Give people something they will remember because by default, they will forget everything you say very quickly. You also need to make it related. So here we're still on the time idea, but we're actually getting into the clockwork here, where everything needs to be related. What you're saying needs to be related to your audience and their needs and the context. And that too often isn't the case. Too often, someone will be in the audience thinking, why is this person presenting this to me? I have no idea. So why is it related to them and their needs? What you show on the screen needs to be related to what you're saying at the time, not before, not after. And also, when you speak, you need to create that connection with your audience. You need to make eye contact. If you're online, you need to make that contact with the camera as opposed to the screen. But if you're in a room, you need to make sure you're looking people in the eyes and trying to get close to them wherever possible and not hiding behind a podium. That relationship is important. A presentation should be a series of conversations and not a monologue. And the fifth key success factor, and this is so important, and this is that you have to make everything enjoyable. Now, making a presentation enjoyable for your audience does not sound logical for business. It's like, well, this is a quarterly project update, or this is an analyst presentation. It doesn't need to be enjoyable. It's full of numbers, so just have an extra coffee. It will be fine. Actually, no, because those people are not going to be paying attention. What you need to do, and here I'm going to take a very old kind of clock, is you need to imagine that their attention is like this, the sand in this hourglass. And what you see is that sooner or later, even if you're interesting, even if what you say is interesting, sooner or later there will be no sand left. They will have no attention left. And it's not up to your audience to make the effort to listen. It's up to you to make the effort to reset their attention regularly, turn over that hourglass, and then make them want to listen. And that's one of the things that we've really tried to put forward in this book, is the art of storytelling to make your presentation enjoyable, to make your slides something that they actually want to look at, and to make the way you speak something which is not boring and monotonous, but actually has vocal variation and passion and makes people really want to listen. So those are those 5 key success factors. And if we put them together, we get simple, clear, original, related, and enjoyable. And if we put a P for presentation, not for Phil, P for presentation in front of them, then we get P score. And that is the presentation score method, which this book is all about. So the book is intended to take you through this presentation score method. And that presentation score method, which you'll find in 5 sections in the book, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very easy to follow. Each of them corresponds to a particular stage in the process and a particular revolution. Now, I'm a big fan of Gar Reynolds. Gar Reynolds is probably the one who started this revolution more than 10 years ago when he published the fantastic book, Presentation Zen. I love that book. I still love that book. And Gar did me the great honor of giving me an endorsement, which we put on the cover of this book. Now, Gar says in Presentation Zen, this book is not a method, it is an approach. Business Presentation Revolution is a method. It is a practical, hands-on book that will give you a method, which is the same one that we at Ideas on Stage use for all of our presentations. It's the same one that we use with our clients. It's the one we teach. We've been teaching it for 11 years now, and basically we know it works. So I really encourage you to try to use this method as well. And there are 5 stages, and each of those stages corresponds to a great revolution. So let's go through these 5 revolutions. The first revolution is, it's not your presentation, it's theirs. Before the revolution, before today, before this revolution, generally we thought, I'm presenting, it's my presentation. No, it's not. It's theirs. It belongs to them. In the word presentation, there is the word present. It's like a gift. It's something you offer to your audience. Make it to measure for them. Forget the idea of having one standard pitch or one standard presentation, which is equally applicable to every audience. No, it's equally irrelevant to every audience. Make it to measure for a specific audience in a specific context. Second revolution, aim not to inform your audience, but to transform them. Why? Because we forget most of what we hear very quickly. In fact, I'm pretty sure by the time I get to the 5th revolution, you'll probably have forgotten revolutions 1 and 2. That happens. We forget things unless the presenter repeats them a few times. That's normal. In a presentation, we need to be aiming to transform our audiences. We need to be aiming not to be filling their brains full of information, but simply making them want to do something. What do you want your audience to do, to feel, to believe after your presentation? If they don't feel or believe or do anything new after the presentation, well, then you've wasted your time and you've wasted theirs. Third revolution, create your storyline. Oh, there's a problem with the slide there. To create your storyline line. There's the problems of being live. Create. I'm gonna stand up there. Create your storyline. There we are. Before your slides. This is a real problem that we had many times in the past, where you would actually be creating your slides. I need to make a presentation. Oh, right. Well, I'm going to create my slides. And then sooner or later, okay, I've finished. I'm going to now think, what do I need to say? What do I need to say? I don't know what I need to say. And you improvise in front of the audience and it doesn't look good. So instead, create your storyline before your slides. And only when you know what you're going to say, then you imagine what you're going to show them. And this is a big change. It's a simple change, but it makes all the difference. The 4th revolution is don't confuse slides with documents. This is crazy. Don't confuse slides with documents. When I do an exercise in my training courses and I ask people, what do you hate about presentations? The number one thing I hate is people saying it's people who confuse Word with PowerPoint. People who are imagining that they can just kill 2 birds with 1 stone with a slide which looks something like this. This is the typical kind of boring bullet point slide that we've seen thousands of times and we don't want to see again because people can't read and listen at the same time. It doesn't help. So if I put all this text up there and then basically I'm going to be reading it to you, well, you'll be reading faster than I can speak and you'll be getting to the bottom before I've got halfway down. And you'll be thinking, okay, wake me up when he catches up. But then whatever happens then, it's going to be, if I don't do that, if I say something different, which is what I'm doing now, well, then you'll be thinking, do I read? Do I listen? Do I try to do both? Do I fail? I don't know. So we can't be doing slides like this. It actually doesn't help. This is absolutely death by PowerPoint. So you do not want to be doing that. It doesn't help. But it's also not a good document. So you actually need to be giving people a separate document. In our training courses, we give people not a copy of our slides, we give people a full workbook, which is actually like a 50-page workbook with lots of exercises, spaces for notes, templates, etc. And that helps them during the course, but also after the course. So remember that revolution. Slides are not documents. Don't confuse them. If you try to kill two birds with one stone, you won't kill any. And unfortunately, that's just not going to work very well. So that's number 4. Number 5, aim not for perfect, but for personal. When you are speaking to your audience, you will not make a perfect presentation. Today's presentation by me is not perfect. It never is. I have never made a perfect presentation. There's always something you can improve. But if you make a connection with your audience, and if they are enjoying listening to you, well, then they'll hopefully forgive you for having an extra line somewhere at the top of the screen, or making something wrong, or starting a sentence and then maybe needing to say something different. So if you make that connection, if you try to understand your audience and care about your audience, well, then they will care to listen to you, and they'll forgive you for those few little imperfections. At the end of the day, they would prefer to see a real human you than a absolute robotic but perfect presenter, because that actually wouldn't be very good anyway. So don't aim for perfect, really make that a personal connection. So those are our 5 revolutions. And if we put those 5 revolutions together, then we'll be able to get our presentation score method. Right? The presentation score method, or P-score for short, because presentation score method is quite long, and this is what we'll see in the book, covers these 5 stages. The first stage is the foundation. Foundation stage, this is where we try to understand, who is my audience? What are their burning needs? Why are they there listening to me? And then in what context am I presenting to them? Am I, like today, on Zoom? How long do I have? Or is it going to be live in a meeting room or a conference center or an amphitheater? What's the situation? What's the context? What is their context? What's their business situation? What is my context? What's my business situation? And there's a whole load of things that we can ask ourselves. It might not take long, but if we don't know who we're presenting to, then we cannot establish clear objectives. When we then get into the second phase, which is ideation, this is where we need to establish clear transformational objectives. I know my audience. What do I want my audience to do, to feel, to believe after my presentation? And then we can go through a targeted, structured brainstorming process using our audience transformation roadmap, which you'll find detailed in this book. And there, you'll be able to find the ideas for what to say, what to show, what to do in order to achieve those transformations in your audience. And that kind of targeted brainstorming works amazingly well. So once we finish that stage, we've got loads of ideas, then we can put them together in the creation phase. And in the creation phase, this is where, if we've got all of our ideas on sticky notes, for example, well, that's where we're going to be putting those sticky notes somewhere in a structure using the art of storytelling. And there are different structures which are applicable for different kinds of presentation. So in the additional resources, because this book, it's only a black and white 200-page book, but there are additional resources that we have on our website. The link is in the book. Where you can get downloadable templates for storylines, which you can use with examples, as well as things like slide examples, as well as lots of different guides and plenty of video resources. So the book is just a beginning, it's not an end. There's lots of extra stuff there. But these storyline templates will really help you to structure the presentation using the art of storytelling. Once we get past there, and this is where I'm going to have to move to the other side of the screen, because otherwise I'm going to be in front of what I'm talking about, we get to the illustration phase. And this is where, after we have prepared our storyline, once we know what we're going to say, then we can think about, how am I going to illustrate it? What slides might my audience need? What would help my audience to get my messages, to understand them better, and to be able to remember them better? Once I then have my slides and potentially any documents that my audience might need before, during, or after the presentation, well, then I can think about the connection phase, and that's where I prepare to speak. I make sure that I'm physically prepared. I make sure I'm mentally prepared. I make sure I've rehearsed well, and that's where I'm going to be able to deliver a good job in front of my audience on the day. So there's tips in there for how to beat stress, how to find your own style, how to rehearse well, and how to deliver, how to make sure you're ready on the day in order to do your best for your audience. So with these 5 phases, you remember there were 5 revolutions. Well, guess what? Those revolutions map perfectly to these 5 phases. So if we start off with the foundation phase, it's not your presentation, it's theirs. Focus in this phase on your audience and what they need. In the ideation phase, this is where we remember we're not aiming to inform our audience, we're aiming to transform our audience. So we think about what they need to do and feel and believe differently after the presentation. And with that, we can then think about what we can say, show, and do to achieve that. In the creation phase, we create that storyline before we create our slides. And that is so vital. We create that before we create the slides, because otherwise we're simply going to be commenting on slides instead of having the slides illustrating what we should be saying. Then in the illustration phase, we don't confuse slides with documents. Remember, we don't kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Slides are visual aids for a presentation. They are visual aids to help people while they are listening to you. A document is something they read while they're not listening to you. So it's 2 completely different animals. And then finally, in the connection phase, we don't aim for perfect, we aim for personal. We aim to create that personal connection with our audience. And if we can follow those 5 stages, then we will make sure we succeed in front of our audience. So all of these stages are so important. And I actually write in the introduction to the book, don't skip the foundation phase, because if you skip this foundation phase, it may only take you 5 minutes, but it's the 5 most important minutes you will spend. It's so important. So remember those 5 key success factors. If you follow that process, you should be able to make a presentation which is simple, doesn't say too much, but says it well. Clear, objectives are clear, message is clear, structure is clear, slides are easy to read, and what you say is easy to hear and understand. Original, different, your own style, something they haven't heard before, because we pay more attention to something new. Related, in terms of related to the audience's needs and their context, in terms of being able to speak, making a good connection with the audience, and having only slides which are actually related to what you're saying at the time. And then finally, enjoyable, because if they don't enjoy it, they won't be listening, and it doesn't matter what you actually say to them, they probably won't be listening fully. So please remember all of those 5 success factors. That's what I aim to deliver with the book. That's what I'm hoping that anyone who buys the book will be able to deliver. They say that even if this book is for leaders, they say that the main aim of a leader is not to create followers. It's to create more leaders. So that was something that Gar Reynolds certainly tried to do. I hope that I have turned into not just a follower, but that I'm able to lead and inspire some other people. But my aim with this book is to make sure that you and anyone else who reads it can also turn into a leader. Every time you present, that people say, whoa, that's fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I got something out of it. Where did you learn to present like that? And then you too can be a leader and start promoting the revolution of presentations wherever you work. Because let's face it, most presentations really, really do need help. Audiences need help. And if you adopt the business presentation revolution, I am very sure your audiences will thank you for it. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for listening. And I'll be very, very happy to be taking all of your questions. So Hélène, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil. I think you just gave us a great demonstration of the skills that you'd like, many more people to develop with the book. So we've had a few questions and a little discussion in the chat. a very, very simple question to start with, which is basically, where do we buy the book in its different forms, basically?
Where do we buy the book? Okay, well, the book is available already on Amazon. Now, the paperback copy here in France, where I am, the paperback copy actually sold out, believe it or not. It's only out today, but it was available for pre-order. And I know some of my clients ordered quite a lot of copies, and it's now out of stock. So the paperback in France, you can't get it. On Amazon.com, you can. It's available for order on Amazon.co.uk as well. The printers or the publishers at Rethink Press, fantastic people at Rethink Press, have told me that although to start with, it may say delivery will take several weeks, actually it won't. It will end up being a lot faster. And hopefully within a week or two, Amazon will be saying it's available for dispatch almost immediately, especially if there's plenty of demand for it. So it can be ordered on most Amazon sites as a paperback, but it can also be ordered as a Kindle ebook. So the Kindle ebook is actually available today and tomorrow for just 99 pence in the UK, 99 cents in Europe, and 99 cents also in dollars. But that is really just today and tomorrow. So it's available on Kindle, and you see here the kind of the Kindle device. You can also see that it's available for download or for using on your smartphone and on your tablets. So you don't have to have a Kindle device in order to have a Kindle ebook and to read the book on it. So earlier today, I bought my copy. Yeah, I bought my copy when it became available this afternoon. I bought it for the 99 cents on my phone. You have to use the web browser. You can't use the app for some reason, but you have to use the web browser on your phone or your PC or your Mac. And then I simply bought that, and it downloaded automatically to my iPad, to my phone, to my Mac, and to my Kindle reader, because yes, I do have a Kindle reader. So hopefully that will tell you how to get it. And please take advantage of that offer. It's not going to be 99p for very long.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for the promotion as well. Gordon is asking us, and is been very curious, and I'm curious as well, on what you're using today, so that this Zoom presentation is so great. And what's the mechanism or the setup that you have actually to be able to move like this and show us nice slides at the same time?
Well, the mechanism is it's a beta product, so it's within Zoom. This is native in Zoom. I'm not using anything else. Now, there are some great third-party tools like MMHMM, right, which is an interesting one. I'm not using that. I'm simply using Zoom. So when you click at the bottom of your screen in Zoom to share screen, when you click that, you should have 3 tabs. The first one is basic. The second one is advanced. If you click that advanced tab, then the first option is to use slides as virtual background. Okay. So what I'm doing is I've selected that. I've selected my slide deck, which I prepared specially so that I would ideally not be walking in front of things that people hadn't seen already. And I prepared with it so that I knew when I had to be on this side of the screen, but also when I had to be on this side of the screen. So it takes a little bit of preparation, but it does work. So there you can use your PowerPoint deck behind you. Does not accept transitions or animations or videos or animated GIFs or anything, but it does work. And so that's in Zoom. It's a beta product, but I think it works pretty well. I hope you've enjoyed it today. And I think it's a lot better than simply seeing me as a little window somewhere on the right of the screen while the slides are huge.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that on our end, the effect is really good. So we have Joe as well, who is really asking, okay, we have here a great methodology. It has now, it's very robust. You've tested it many, many times. It's now a book that can be spread even, in a wider audience. How do you think that you can drive this revolution forward? Because, as some people have been saying in the chat, some of these things, we know them. We know that, a lot of things that we're doing in presentations are not good, but it's still happening. So how do you, would like to push this forward? And maybe a secondary question linked to this one, how do you suggest that people use the book once they've bought it, of course? Okay.
So two separate questions. I'll take the first one first. So how do we actually push this revolution forward? It's a great question because Presentation Zen came out more than 10 years ago. I think the difficulty is that generally when people read presentations, then they think, wow, that's fantastic. Sometimes what they remember is I need to use some like full screen, high resolution images and a couple of words in my slides. Whereas that's like one of many really important messages in Gar's books. But the thing is, I found a lot of people who think, it has Zen in the title, it has rocks on the cover, it's not a business book. Well, you know what? Yes, it is a business book. Right? I mean, Gar used to work at Apple. He used to work in a bank. He teaches in a university and business school. He knows business really well. And I've been using it in business presentations for years. But there are people who will say, nah, it's not really a business book. So I actually wanted a book which had the word business on the cover, which offered a method which business people can use so that we can get this in the hands of senior executives. Why? Because if we want actually to make a difference, we have to start at the top of companies. I've worked with a lot of organizations over the last 11 years. And what I've found is that if I train people at a lower level in an organization, they get it, they love it. And then their bosses say, no, we need more bullet points. So you need to start from the top. And where you have a company where you actually have the top, the executive committee showing what is possible and expecting good slides, expecting clear, simple presentations, it works well. I remember when I was working with Orange a few years ago, right? Luc Breton, he's not there anymore. He was the head of the Technocentre at Orange. He would say to people, no presentation longer than 5 minutes. Just tell me what I need to know, no more. Keep it simple. And so everybody did. When the leaders do that, then things can happen. So this is why I'm targeting this book at senior executives, at leaders, but it's also very useful for those who are wanting to start their own company or who are at a lower level in an organization and who are wanting to become those leaders. But we've got to hit high, we've got to hit the board level. The second question then is, if I remember,
how to use the book, basically.
How to use the book. So I've actually written this in the introduction there. I recommend we actually use it in 2 different ways. So first, I would recommend read it through from start to finish. And there are exercises in there. Maybe you don't do the exercises first time because there are exercises at the end of most chapters. But read it once when you don't need to prepare a presentation to learn, to understand the method so that you can get your head around it. And then the next time you need to produce a presentation, go through it chapter by chapter, performing the exercises. And it might take a little bit of time because you're learning as you're doing, right? But then the second time, it will take a lot less time. And I've seen people, I remember a few years ago, a great guy called Steve Tongish. He was a marketing executive at Aviva in the UK. And Steve adopted this approach. And he then made a presentation for the sales team at Aviva. I remember him telling me afterwards, you know what, Phil, I've got 2 things to say. First thing to say is it took me a lot longer to prepare that presentation than all of my previous presentations. Second thing I wanted to say is the sales team loved it. They wanted to learn how did I learn to present like that? How can they get some of it? A couple of weeks later, he said, you know what? I've been preparing more presentations and it's now taking me less time than it did before. So my aim is not to give you a method that takes you more time. It's something that takes you less time, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. So read the book first, then go through it chapter by chapter, preparing a presentation. And then you'll see that when you prepare your next presentation, it will all go that much more smoothly.
Okay, great. We're having now lots of questions. So Tanuja asked us, and I think this is a really important point. How do you actually keep this energy level, really high in a presentation? And you use, this great glass hour, you call it, I believe.
The hourglass.
Yeah, exactly, the hourglass here. And it really corresponds to the E of your score, enjoyable. So how do you do that? Could you give us some tips basically on that?
It's partly on what you say, it's partly on how you say it. So this is where we really do get into that idea of storytelling. So there are 2 aspects of storytelling. There's the story itself and there's the telling. Now, what we'll see in the book is that storytelling is not just telling stories. Storytelling is really about using the art of a screenwriter or the art of a dramatist to grab people's attention and keep their attention. So there are 3 aspects of that which we go through. The first is structuring a presentation like a story from introduction all the way through to a conclusion so that you're keeping their attention from start to finish. Then there are the stories, the anecdotes, the examples you put in there, like the example I just gave of Steve Tongish at Aviva and his presentation to the sales team. But there's also what I call chocolate chips. So chocolate chips, imagine a cookie. Imagine a cookie without any chocolate chips. It's okay, it tastes all right, but imagine it with the chocolate chips. It makes you want to eat it a lot more, and it makes you enjoy it more when you do eat it. So you can do the same in a presentation. And chocolate chips are things that you say and show and do that make people smile or make people think, or create an emotional reaction. So one of the books I love and that I recommend a lot is Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina. And he talks about a method that he uses when he is teaching. And in this book, he says that every 10 minutes when he's teaching, he will try to reset people's attention. So that was what sparked this idea of the hourglass, where basically we're going to need every 10 minutes to switch over their attention, to reset their attention. So he found that he won a teaching award for doing this, but he realized after 10 minutes, people's attention is going down. In online meetings and online presentations, well, then it's going to go down even faster. So you really do need to make sure that you're putting in those chocolate chips. It's something emotional, can be a surprise, a video, asking them a question, something unexpected. And that way, people will maintain their attention. But the other part, of course, is the telling. Because you can do all of that, but if you speak with that boring, monotonous voice, or you never actually look at the audience, well, then they're not going to listen for very long. So as a presenter, you actually need to be like a generator of energy. You need to be giving energy to your audience. When I'm giving a keynote and I come off stage, or if I'm giving a training course for the day, by the time I'm finished, I'm practically dead. I have given all of my energy to that audience. But that's what you need to do as a presenter. You need to be transferring energy to them, transferring passion to them, because if you are not passionate, they won't be either. And if you're not convinced clearly, visibly and audibly, well, they won't be convinced either. You can't be convincing if you're not convinced. So it's partly in how you say it, but it really is partly in what you say. And it takes planning and it takes preparation. A presentation is hard work. It's either hard work for you as the presenter, and if you don't put in the hard work, well, it's hard work for the audience. So I always say, put in the preparation time, and then the presentation will take care of itself.
Okay, I think this is actually a really great transition to a question by Frédéric Pascal. He's asking us basically, how different is the book that is being published now, 14th of July, 2021, from, let's say, a couple of years ago. I suppose that we're talking pre-COVID. So in what way the book is different from what it could have been, 2 years ago, let's say?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that one. The book has been rewritten this year. So I've been writing this book for, I wouldn't say 2 years. I've actually been writing this for 8 years. And our clients never really gave me enough spare time to finish it, but I'm also very good at procrastinating. So I said to myself at the beginning of this year, I'm going to get it done. But it was my colleague, Joe, who said to me, you know what, all of the presentation books out there are now basically obsolete. Really? Why? Because they don't always take into consideration the amazing surge in online presentations that we've seen over the last 18 months. And that doesn't mean that what they say is not useful. It still is useful. And I had a really good conversation about that with Gar Reynolds, which is actually available on our YouTube channel and on the Ideas on Stage podcast, where we're talking about how, in fact, what was in Presentation Zen 3rd edition, it's relevant to online presentations. It's doubly relevant for online presentations, but he doesn't really cover it particularly. He's actually just put out Presentation Zen 3rd edition in Japanese, and there he's got stuff which does talk about online presentations. What I tried to do with this book is to make sure that in every chapter, at every part of this, I'm assuming that by default, your presentation is online. It might also be on stage, but if what you do works online, it will also work on stage. So I would say that the book changed, probably every chapter changed significantly to take advantage of this. However, and this is really important, all of the methods that we talk about in storytelling, in visual design, and in speaking, they really do go double when you're speaking online. You've got to turn over that hourglass more regularly than you did before. you've actually got to speak very clearly, because online you have much more of an international audience. And so it's so important to make sure that you are speaking in a way that a non-native speaker can understand and not too fast. And in your storyline, in your structure, you've really got to be making sure that you're designing for attention at the start. So all of that make this a really like online native book, but still equally relevant if you're on stage, as opposed to an on-stage meeting room presentation book, which also does some online stuff. So I hope that answered your question then.
Sure. So we still have a few more minutes, and we have I think we have two more questions. One really fast one that maybe we can address first, which is, any other language that you plan for the book?
Absolutely. So to start off with, we're planning on to do this, it's available in English. And I've tried to write it using simple English so that non-native speakers will understand well. However, we are aiming to have a Spanish version and hopefully a French version available within, I don't have a time frame, but hopefully within the next 12 months at some point. We may go for an Italian version. I'm not sure. If there are publishers out there who want to be translating this and having a Portuguese or a Japanese or a Chinese version, then please do make an inquiry to Rethink Press, and I'm sure they'll be very happy to plan that.
Okay, and so maybe one last, and then I believe Todd would like to speak up as well, which is, could you quote for us one really inspiring presentation or presenter that maybe inspired you and could inspire us, and maybe has a video, publicly available? So who would be your favorite, in other words? I'm going to answer that with two people, partly for gender balance and partly because these are two completely different presenters, but who I actually find fantastic. One of the ones who inspired me a lot back in the early days of Ideas on Stage was Hans Rosling. So Hans Rosling, and one of my colleagues can hopefully type that into the chat for everybody. He was a statistician, the head of the Gapminder Foundation, and he did many TED Talks, which are still available online, and I still watch them sometimes. And it's wonderful the way that he structures those talks, the way he clearly prepared them well, the way that he uses props, he uses different things to make information and data interesting. He speaks clearly. He speaks in a very dynamic, very passionate way, and he uses slides in a great way. So for me, that was a revelation watching Hans Rosling, and I still love watching him today. And the other one that I enjoyed working with many years ago, and I still enjoy listening to her today, is a lovely American stroke Indian lady called Pavi Mehta, who did a few talks. She's done some TEDx talks, etc. You can find them on YouTube. So MEHTA. I just love how calm yet convincing she is when she speaks. And I think she's an example to speakers anywhere. So those are two that I would definitely recommend people check out. I think they're really, really good speakers and they inspire me. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Phil. So I believe Todd would like to say a word.
So if we can give the microphone to Todd, I'd love to hear from him. Can we give the microphone to Todd?
Oh. So Todd is muted.
Great, how about now?
Todd, we hear you.
Okay, great, I was muted, I was held hostage against. So first tip for presenters is you need to be unmuted. So Phil, first of all, congratulations. I had the pleasure to read Phil's book in advance, and it's terrific. And also you practice what you preach today. So it was an amazing demonstration of your approach, your method, and your terrific framework. So first of all, thank you to Andrea for making this introduction. I met Andrea on Zoom last year. We got to be friends, and then he introduced me to you. So happy to be here today. I'm in an all-day leadership conference, and I jumped off that just to be here to see you in action. So it's great to be here. I loved your book. To me, the two biggest influences on me as a presenter were Gar Reynolds, his presentation Zen and The Naked Presenter, and Nancy Duarte, whose books Slideology and Resonate had the greatest impact on me. But your book is an amazing new addition to this group of classic presentation books. So I would recommend it to any business professional to help them be more effective. Your score method is terrific. And I know I talk too fast because I'm packing a lot in, and I'm from New York anyway. So, but I just want to say congratulations. I'm happy to be here, and I want to congratulate you on your book. I endorsed it. I'll write my Amazon review, and I'll recommend it to everyone. So congratulations, Phil.
Thank you very much, Todd. So Phil, I believe that we've come to the end of this session. It was great hearing you and, hearing the good things about, what's in the book. You got me very, very interested. I'm sure all the audience today. So I guess we all wish you, great success so that the revolution can truly happen. And so, good luck for the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
thank you
Hélène.
everyone for being here today.
Thank you, Hélène. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you all enjoy it. Tell us what you think. And I look forward to seeing all of your reviews online. Take care, everyone.